Well, hello there,
Mr. Benoit, how are you, sir?
Mr. Tall. I'm doing all right, man. I'm doing all
Yeah,
right. How are you? Like the shirt.
thank you. Actually, I was going to say I like yours. We
Oh,
both
well,
look kind of bulky today. I don't know. That's just, you look like, look like you got a manly chest and nice broad shoulders. I like it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Body that God.
Brandon, on the other hand, is not wearing a t-shirt. He's looking much more professional than either one of
Yeah, he
us. So
is.
I don't know, Brandon, whether whether we are too casual for you or what, but
I can grab
we're
the
rolling
hoodie.
with it.
Yeah, I was telling PJ earlier, I used to think that I had to be all put together, all polished, the whole thing. And we were talking about cutting podcasts and stuff. And now I just like the real deal. So maybe, you know what, I'm going to go change into a t-shirt and show you my tattoos. Hang on. Oh, wait, I don't have
That's
any.
good. No, you don't have any tattoos or any
No,
t-shirts?
I don't have, no, I don't. Well, I have few t-shirts. Every
Uh-huh.
t-shirt I've gotten, I think, has come from a conference. I don't think I've purchased a t-shirt in the last 25 years. Have you guys?
Oh my God.
Well, we have not, but given that you brought up a topic that is near and dear, PJ and I have been talking about. There've been so many t-shirt moments in our podcasts over the course of the last couple of months, and we are going to turn some of those. Really, anytime you'd heard our podcast and heard either one of us say that should be on a t-shirt, well, guess what? It's going to be on a t-shirt.
That's right.
And we're going to be
Are you
selling it out
merching?
of our website,
We're merching.
bravingbusiness.com. So we'll obviously be telling you about it and giving people an opportunity to get a shirt. And then, you know what, Brandon, I don't know. We'll see what this interview brings. But if you happen to say something that goes on a shirt, you get a free version of it. We get to keep all the royalties, but you get the shirt.
Naturally.
Okay.
Of course.
So
Yep.
excellent. All right. Well, so long as we have that covered. Well, PJ, why don't we tell our audience who our guest is today, and then let's go off to the races.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we are very, very happy to have Brandon Pipkin on today. For over 25 years, Brandon has been focused on improving the lives of other people, which is extremely altruistic. He works with sales leaders and teams who can't afford to simply be average. He's the author of the book 21 Questions for 21 Millionaires: How Ordinary People Create Extraordinary Success. And I'm really excited to hear more about those insights. He's also authored and guided dozens of training courses on leadership, sales, communications, recovery from emotional abuse, which is another very interesting topic we're going to delve into, and more. Brandon has an MBA in healthcare management, a bachelor's degree in organizational leadership, and according to himself, and I would imagine his wife and neighbors would also chime in on this, he has well below average skills in drumming. Most importantly, he is the father of 5 amazing people and spends his mornings following the dog and cleaning up after him. I know the pain all too well.
Me too.
Brandon, it is a pleasure to have you join us today on the Braving Business podcast.
Thanks for having me. Yes. I think that's why she's the ex-wife now. The skills were below average, as well as many other things.
Oh goodness. Okay. Well, that's for the X-rated version. I think we're just gonna leave that alone.
No.
Let's dive into improving the lives of others. Brandon, you've been doing this for a long time. Yeah. Well, what can I say? You set me up. It was a softball across the middle of the plate, my friend.
I'm going here. You're going there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, what can I say?
Quite the
You have an MBA in healthcare management, but as I guess arguably you're helping people manage their health organizationally, on some level, I guess individually. But you're in sales, leadership, and communication. I'd love to hear how you wound up doing the work you're doing.
Yeah, great question, and you've kind of hit on something. I'm an entrepreneur. I can't decide what I want to be when I grow up. There are way too many exciting, intriguing things that I am interested to do and feel called to do. And so the way that I ended up in sales management, and sales training, especially now, is I fell into it all. It's very circuitous. I served a 2-year church mission in Germany and Switzerland. And as part of that, I got to train people and I loved it. And when I came back home, I thought I would probably be a teacher or something like that. But I realized I wanted to have a family, and I wasn't sure I could support a family on a teacher's salary. And I actually had no idea that during this church mission, I was actually getting the best sales education of my life. Can you imagine? I'm in a foreign country. I'm talking to people about something so near and dear to them, like religion. And I'm learning skills to get them opened up about that and talking about that and connecting with them about that. And so came home, I needed a job.
I would imagine you also had a lot of doors shut in your face and a lot of no's. So you have to, that's another critical skill if you're in sales.
Oh,
More than you can imagine. Exactly. Yeah. You spend 2 years doing that, and maybe you get in Switzerland. I don't recall that we got into maybe more than 100 doors in that 2 year time frame. Of
Wow.
not, yeah.
Well, I wouldn't know from personal experience, but I have seen the Book of Mormon. So there you go.
Yeah, exactly.
That's my point of reference.
Somebody saw, I have something on my LinkedIn profile about the 2 year church mission I did. And one of my clients was asking me about it. She said, what was that volunteer assignment you did? And I said, well, do you know the white shirts, the ties, like the Book of Mormon musical? She said, oh, I love that. I love that. I said, well, that was me. And she went, oh, I hate that.
I gotta say, I love that
I
too.
hate it.
That's a it's one of my favorite musicals. I actually was just talking about over the weekend because I want to take someone who hasn't seen it to see it because I think she's gonna love it.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, carry on. I apologize.
So, yeah, that's how my mind works too. So I came back from that and needed a job. I had a friend who was leaving to go on his mission. He said, just take over my job. And it was driving a maintenance and janitorial supply truck for one of his friend's parents who owned a small business. Started driving the truck. After a couple months, maybe it was a month, she came to me and she said, look, you're wasting my time driving this truck. And I thought, geez, I can't hold this job down. She's going to fire me. And what she said was, your skill set is better suited for sales. I had no idea what sales was. Again, I had this 2 year experience, but I didn't know that I was selling. I had no clue. She put me into sales. I stayed in sales management for a long time until I was working for CompUSA. You guys remember CompUSA?
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah. Here's where I'm supposed to say good things and not speak badly. It was a terribly run organization. It was horrendously run, right? And everything about this job was killing me. I had a fantastic boss, but so many things about that job were killing me because of the way that things were done. The only thing I really loved was training my team. So I prayed and I said, where do you need me? Because this really is freaking killing me. And the answer was go into training. And so I had to slog through some terrible jobs in between that weren't all that fitting for the family and what we needed and different things. But I moved into training from there and then have been in training, sales training since that time.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. A couple of things. Kyle, I think we already have our t-shirt moment with the whole, I'm an entrepreneur. I don't know what I want to be when I grow up.
Yeah. Yeah. He said it better, but you're right. That is,
he did say it better. That is very, very good. And B, I have all the respect in the world for anyone who does the missions, because I used to live in Hawaii at the top of a valley, and those poor guys would come to our door panting, completely out of breath, just sweating.
Did you at least give him some water, PJ?
Yeah,
I know you didn't let him in the door.
I was like, come on in. Give me the
let him in. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Did you let him in?
Yeah, I did. I was like, give me the spiel. I'm going to give you some water. I don't care. But you know, you could do your what you're supposed to do and not die on my driveway. So here you go.
Well, so when I told you we got into maybe 100 doors, I bet 20 at least of those were pity. They had pity on us.
So, but you're also,
by the way, another skill that's not so bad in sales. You know, if somebody takes pity on you and takes a sales call, you know what? You're in the door. When you're in the door, take advantage. It doesn't matter how you got in, pity or not, right?
You get it. You get it. Well,
Tal's on it today. So your book, 21 Questions for 21 Millionaires, and I know you. I realize you didn't reach out to me about this, so clearly,
nor me.
21. Yeah, it wasn't 22 or 23. We get it. You know how ordinary people create extraordinary success.
Yeah,
sounds incredibly intriguing. What prompted you to write this book? I love the premise. What kind of were there any like tidbits that you took away from it? You know, in interviewing these millionaires?
Yeah, tons that I took away. So the impetus was I grew up in poor circumstances. Mom raised 4 of us alone, no help from dad. And I vowed I'm not going to be poor when I grow up. And then life was a struggle. And so I got involved in this network marketing deal and I thought, oh, I'm going to be so successful. It's going to take off. And in the midst of that, I just kept getting more frustrated and more in debt. But I came across this thought that changed my life. And it was, gosh, I'm going to blank on the guy's name. He's a real estate trainer, Robert, somebody in Utah. And he said something about every one of us has a unique note that we play in the symphony of life. And if we are not playing that note, the symphony is deficit of what it could be. And he tied it into passion. And so I had this idea strike me. I wanted to interview some millionaires to find out how they found their passion and parlayed that to be their success. And then I wanted to write a book on that to show others how to find their passion, bring their note to this symphony so that the world could be enriched by their unique gift, talent, and ability. So I started interviewing these millionaires. And by the way, there's a follow-on for billionaires. So I'll probably contact you both on that one. Sorry.
Fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah, that makes much more sense. Thank you.
Yeah. Yep. So I started
I was
interviewing.
wondering why you hadn't contacted us, Peter, but now I get it.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
So I started interviewing these millionaires. And on the third interview, I interviewed this guy named Matt Given. And Matt was a client at CompUSA who had turned into a friend of mine. I asked him about his business plan. I said, you had a business plan, I'm sure, when you started your third business. He said, well, it was more of a sketch on a whiteboard. I asked him about his goals. He said, I've never really had a goal like this is what I want to accomplish. And if I get here, I've made it or something like that. And I also asked him about his passion. He said, I don't know. I don't know what my passion is. I've never had that conversation with myself. And that was the third interview I did. And suddenly I realized, it kind of stopped me in my tracks. And I realized, wait a minute, Matt didn't really have written down goals. We hear all the time, you've got to have goals. You've got to have clear goals that you're striving toward. He didn't know what his passion was. He didn't even have a business plan when he started his third business. And I started to dig into the real deal. And from then on, I just wanted to know the truth. How and why did these people do what they did? And it was quite intriguing because it does fly in the face of everything we've been told about success.
Well, give us an example. That, I mean, this sounds super intriguing.
Well, I think he kind of did. I mean, the interesting thing that he just shared, which I find very credible, is that there was no master plan. There was no, secret, genius,
Bingo.
opportunity, sweat, and good fortune. Almost always is what makes success.
And the pivot.
But Brandon, since the question was posed to you by PJ, we would love to hear one or two other insights if you have any, or you could just repeat mine. That's fine.
Hilarious the way that you said it, Tal. No master plan, because the seventh person I interviewed, he said, I had no master plan. I was playing volleyball. And what he meant by that was PJ, you and I talked earlier about why people moved to Colorado. He moved out here for a lifestyle choice. He was in New York. He was a banker. Hated it. He saw a movie, I forget what it was, and it featured Colorado, and he said, oh, I need to move out there. So he comes out here and he starts playing volleyball at Wash Park, gets to know these guys. One of them is buying jewelry off the Indian reservations, and then I think he was reselling it just in a small circle of his. And Steve was playing volleyball with this guy. The guy asked him one time, do you want to come with me to the reservation and buy some jewelry? Steve did. He started loving it. He started a jewelry business based on that, became a multimillionaire as a result of that. So his statement was, I had no master plan. I was playing volleyball. Sean Kane, the 18th person I interviewed, he said, I fell into the profession that I'm in and it became my passion. One of them that I interviewed, she said, yep, a goal not written down is only a plan. I said, so you have written down goals? Oh, yeah. And you did on your way to $1 million? Oh, no, but I do now. So therein is encapsulated this whole idea of the master plan, this whole idea. I love Covey and I love his stuff, but begin with the end in mind is not what these people did. Only 3 of them had written goals. You mentioned it, Tal. It's sweat, it's work. If I could bring any 4-letter word back to the forefront of people's minds, it's work. It's probably going to be a dog lot of work, a lot more than you thought it would be. I think about my entrepreneurial journey and just how much I've had to slog. There has been so many things, so many obstacles. And that it was another lesson from these folks is that there's never any failure. It's just stuff that doesn't work. And so you try something else.
Let me jump on that because, in our pre-interview, you talked about that your entrepreneurial journey that was not linear. I'd love for you to talk more about that, share some of those experiences, and how would you say that non-linear path helped shape your outlook on business and frankly on life?
Yeah, well, it's been frustrating as all get out and rewarding in that I have had, it's either 17 or 21, I forget, 17 or 21 full-time jobs. I've got broad experience, or I can't keep a job. It's one of those two. So what would happen is I would be at a place for 18 months, and then I would see cracks in the organizational culture that didn't sit well with me, or some of them were downright doing things in a dishonest manner. One of them, the one company I worked for, had the Colorado Attorney General office looking into it with a cease and desist order because of its unfair and unethical practices and things. And so I would only stay at these jobs for a limited time. What that did for me, though, is now I can walk into an organization, whether it be manufacturing, finance and insurance, toys, jewelry, payroll, whatever the organization is, and I can pick up a little bit quickly of what they're doing, what their challenges are, because I've got that broad experience. And now it's enabled me to train in over 400 plus global organizations and gain a pretty quick understanding of where I can maybe add some value to them. So that jumping all every 18 months to 3 years and stuff, or sometimes after 2 weeks, used to frustrate me, especially frustrated my ex-wife. She's like, why can't you keep a job? I don't know. It's like, I get tired of them, they get tired of me. I don't know what the story is, but again, that has really helped me now to connect with a wide variety of entrepreneurs and people from all kinds of different industries.
PJ, it feels like there are a couple of prior interviews that we've done that what Brandon shared has relevance to. So the first is we interviewed Alan Cohn, the Peabody winning journalist, and he spoke about frankly the investigation that won him the Peabody, which was of I believe it was Korsky helicopters, and the fact that they put the lives of American troops at risk with having parts in the helicopter that were known to be defective. Oh, and in the discussion we had, we spoke about bad actors and what is it inside organizations that leads good people or people to not act, with high integrity. And you talked about, the fact that you've been in some organizations where the lack of ethics drove you to leave. And I actually, in the interview with Alan, called on people listening to us or watching us on YouTube to take that action if they find themselves in a place where, in order to keep a job, you have to put your morals and your values in the back seat or ignore them altogether. Yeah. Before I go to the second, the second half of that is I have one more guest that which is Ken Bogard from No Honesty, KNOW, No Honesty, who talks a lot about getting into an organization and the need to know, the real situation in order to be able to tell an organization how to fix whatever's not working properly in it. But let's start with the integrity question. Yeah. What is it that you believe causes people to be in organizations? Certainly you weren't the only one that was there, and certainly probably were not the only one that saw that there were ethical issues. What is it that causes good people or people to not do the right thing in instances like that in your experience?
Yeah. Self-interest, money, greed. Plenty of studies show that when we are placed in a certain environment, we take on the characteristics of that environment. And my buddy Michael Keene, the best boss I've ever had, amazing mentor in my life, Michael told me in 2003, person versus environment, environment always wins. And I tried to fight that thought. For these last 20 years, I kept thinking, well, people can rise above their environment. They can change the environment. But what he was talking about is within an organization, that culture will swallow you up. And so you either assimilate or you have to fight against it and rally enough people to your cause and change that environment. But most of the time what happens is the culture folds you in or swallows you up. And we, as social animals or whatever it is within us, we want to be part of the group. We want to belong. And so without a strong financial or a strong mooring, a strong moral mooring, I think we go toward those financial gains and toward what feels good socially. And we justify it a little and a little and a little, and then we don't even think we're doing it.
Interesting. Makes me think of cliques in high school, right? People watch someone bully someone else, and out of fear of maybe being taken out of the group, people look the other way. And I guess maybe those are the same people that grow up and look the other way, when they're at the workplace. I believe that it's impossible. I mean, whatever your life goals are, if your path there is to put the lives of people at risk or do anything else that's unethical, you ought to take a good look at the mirror, because at the end of the day, we have to live with ourselves.
I've said this about one of my former employers. Heaven bless them. They've been very clear on their business model. Their business model is process and profit. They follow their process. They're in it for profit. What they don't really care about are the people.
Yep.
And in some ways, I respect that because they're clear on their business model and the amount of good people that they've washed out. Where their organization could be today, had they taken care of the good people that came through those doors throughout the years, is unbelievable. But they've placed that profit and the process, and they're stepping over dollars to get to dimes, and they think they're doing it all the right way because they're protecting that self-interest.
Yep. Yeah, I've been unfortunately I've been in some calls with when I was like a VP of certain corporations and whatnot, where in 1 minute, and it's all of us heads, and the CEO is saying, hey, we're gonna have to let some people go, right? We're gonna have to let these people go. PJ, you got to let these people go, whatever. I go, okay, right, terrible, but okay. And then the next sentence, it's, hey guys, too bad you're not over at HQ. You should see the rims I just got on my Maserati. It's like, oh, okay.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of bad actors out there. I mean, and that's not even a bad actor. That's just someone who just clearly doesn't care about the people that help him get where he wanted to be. It's just all about profit and the self-interest, as you're going to.
I forget who I just read about, one of the CEOs who needed to make cuts and said, we're starting with the executive team. And if that doesn't go far enough, then we'll come to all of you. But I and the executives are all going to go to 25% of our salaries for the next year.
Yeah.
I gotta say, not to claim sainthood, but I did the same thing. I mean, at iControl, I had for reasons that I went into in my interview, had to take a substantial cut, and I also had to furlough people. The first person that took a cut, and the biggest cut, was me.
Yeah.
And my leadership team took the next biggest cut, and to the extent we could, we spared as many rank and file as possible from furloughs for sure, and pay cuts. And you know what? I don't look at that as a badge of courage or honor. It's just the right thing.
Nice.
And in general, I've followed the point of view that you do the right thing as consistently as you can, as often as you can. And you know what? Whether things work out for you at the end or not, I can't predict that. But you'll be able to look at yourself in the mirror. And that, to me, is a greater, more important value than how many cars are parked in my garage.
Bingo.
The answer to that is 2. PJ, let me allow you to jump back in. Yeah, you're about to ask a question, I think.
No, I was.
Yeah.
But Tal, good on you, right? You did the right thing, and you just did the right thing, and that's cool. Too many people don't. So it's not. I don't know if it's a badge of honor, but actually, it kind of is. So take it, wear it, be proud of it, because you did the right thing. So there you have it. Back to our wonderful guest. So you in the pre-interview, you had also mentioned that you had some issues currently or in the recent past about moving a website or moving your website that kind of took you away from the actual business at hand. We all know website migrations can be tricky. It's not something that we've actually kind of talked about in the podcast before. So it feels like this could be a good touch point for our listeners. What happened and what did it teach you about, trying to expect the unexpected?
This goes back to so many things have just been a slog. And listen, I get it. It's entrepreneurship. It's not supposed to be easy, but is it really supposed to be this hard? Sometimes I ask myself. So I was moving a website, and the website was not robust. Solopreneur. I've got a website that my buddy put up for me, and I've got tons of blogs on it. I want to move it over to GoDaddy, I think it was that I was moving it over to. And GoDaddy has this one-click, port your website over, we'll bring everything over, and it'll be really easy. Oh, that's what I need. Why? Because I'm a solopreneur. Because I've got to be developing the material, delivering the material, building the material, prospecting, selling, everything else. So I just need the tech to work, right? Just work. So I did the one click. It didn't work. I remember writing a blog about all the steps, and I won't bore you with them all. I can't even remember all of them because, you know, that's what happens with trauma. You block some of it out. And so I go through all these steps, and GoDaddy is saying, no, it's the previous one. And the previous one is saying, we have nothing to do with it. It's all GoDaddy. And so I'm getting no help anywhere. So I just had to redo the whole thing. And I lost all the blogs that I had written. So all the SEO that could have been in there and could have been useful to me, I had to just scrap it and move forward without it. And in the process, of course, it takes time and effort to rebuild the website, time and effort to get content back in. Plus, it hurts my credibility because I don't have that history of content that I needed, et cetera. So what did I learn from it? That my path, for whatever reason, is probably going to be twice as hard as anybody else's, 3 times as hard, it seems. And, you know, without being too self-effacing or pity martyr type feeling there, it just seems like it's going to be a harder path for me. And I'm going to have to slog through some different things. And so I can complain about it the entire time, or I can just put the rucksack on and instead of crying about it, run up the hill and let's get through it faster.
Well, a couple of observations. One, I bet that there are a lot of people listening who also feel that they have to work twice as hard, 3 times as hard, and not have the same outcome. I think that is somewhat of the human condition, particularly entrepreneurs. The second thing I would say, and I'm going to put on my consultant hat here. Of course, consulting is what I do most of the time now. It highlights the importance of having a disaster recovery plan when you do anything that involves technology. Technology is tricky and finicky, and if you don't think it through, you will work 2 and 3 times as hard and get half the outcome that you would if you had taken the steps to build a disaster recovery plan or consider it. So I'm not you know trying to shame you. I'm just trying to share hopefully an insight with the audience that they could jump on and factor in if they are in a position to do something with their website or anything else related to technology. I want to pivot for a second, if we can. You know, you've also led training courses on recovery from emotional abuse, and I find that very interesting on a personal level, even on a professional level as well. For starters, I'd love to understand what you felt qualified you to do that, to build and teach these courses. Yeah. And then, if you don't mind, I think it'd be useful, potentially in our audience, with almost definitionally in our audience, there could be some people that are in relationships that are emotionally abusive. Could you point out 1 or 2 things that people could look for to help them maybe identify that they are in a situation like that, and maybe a tip or 2 about how to begin the road to recovery?
Yeah, this may sound cheesy, and I don't mean it to be. I love you for asking that question. I genuinely do, because people who are in these situations do not know where to get help. And you start Googling things like, why does my partner do this? Or is it normal in a relationship too? Or what is bringing this out in my partner? And you try to get this help, and it's murky. And you don't know who to talk to personally, and you don't trust it because you don't know what their reaction will be. You also know that if your partner finds out, you're going to get in trouble. And so you have a really hard time finding good resources. So thank you for asking about it and what people can be aware of. So the first thing is this: if you feel like something is wrong in your relationship, and I don't mean, man, we're not as close as we used to be, or, you know, I wanted to go to Chinese, she really wants to go to Italian, we always go to Italian. That's different than, I feel like something really is wrong here. If you feel like something really is wrong, it probably is. If you wonder if you're being abused psychologically, emotionally, you probably are. So I created a quiz to help people, a free quiz to help people recognize, am I being abused? It's at stopemotionalabuse.net. Just click on the questionnaire, check it out.
And we'll put it in the show notes, so every listener will be able to access it from there.
I appreciate that. Thank you. So what qualified me to do this? I had no idea that I was qualified to do this. I had an unbelievable counselor as I was going through my divorce. The lady was so gifted. She was a gift to humanity, Vicky Tillapot. She passed away in 2015, and it was probably in 2016, 2017, I had this idea: get all the wisdom together that you learned from Vicky and put it together in an online course just to share with people, to bless them generally. Anybody can be a better person using these concepts that she taught me. Like, for instance, keep your own sidewalk clean. Don't worry about somebody else. They're an adult. They get to choose their own behaviors. You don't control anybody. Keep your own sidewalk clean and different things like that. So I start getting this material together. And in the midst of it, like divine revelation, I had this idea. You have an entire abuse recovery course here. Really? So I started looking at the information and I realized all of the information here was about stop chasing approval of other people. Don't be codependent. Set boundaries. Now, the reason that somebody gets into an abusive situation is they're chasing approval. And the abuser looks like somebody who might give that approval. The abuser at first does give that approval. They love bomb. And there are terms for all this. And it's amazing if you're being abused, you start learning these terms and you're like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what's happening. So the abuser will love bomb the codependent person and tell them things like, I've never met anybody like you. You are the most fantastic person I've ever met. I feel so wonderful when I'm with you. Now, the person who's chasing approval because they didn't get it growing up, imagine what that does to them, how they feel around that. It's a drug, it's a hit. Then the abuser knows once they do enough of that, they've got this person on the hook. They start to degrade them, but they know this person will stay there because they want that hit that they'll give intermittently. So I get all this information together. And then people started coming into my life who were in abusive situations or recovering from them. And I started sharing the information with them, and sure shooting, it was exactly what they needed to hear. And it helped them navigate through it. So, and I actually started to wonder, I thought, am I looking at situations that aren't abuse situations because that's my lens? And I'm looking at everything as a nail because I'm carrying a hammer. And again, as if through divine revelation, I had this thought, I told you to put this information together, and now I'm sending people to you. So I continually connect with tons of people who are in or recovering from these situations. The information bears out. This is exactly what they need about why are we chasing approval? How can we stop chasing approval? How can we set boundaries so that this abusive situation is no longer appealing at all?
Yeah, I'm certainly not qualified to offer any any medical advice or any scientific advice. I will just share that the one area that I would maybe want to expound upon beyond what you said is that for some people there is this challenge of they have concluded that their partner is not that calculating, and so they're seeing their partner, they see that their partner treats them abusively, but they don't believe that this is calculated. And you know what? It may not be, but it's irrelevant, right? So if your partner is abusing you in some way, out of ignorance, out of apathy, that doesn't make it any better, right? So in general, I would offer this advice from the cheap seats, which is if someone treats you below the lines of respect,
that's right,
and allows themselves to say and do things that are just not things that certainly someone that cares about you should do, and frankly are things maybe no one should do. Ignore it at your own peril. And I know that's easier said than done, because a lot of times there may be children, there may be financial considerations, there may be a lot of time and effort invested, but we only, YOLO, comes to mind. And if you, as you said, Brandon, I think that's a really, really good bit of advice. If you think you may be in an abusive situation, you very likely are. And I know that's not really the topic of this podcast, but I thought it was important to go there, because really the objective of this podcast ultimately is to help people live better lives. And, you could be successful professionally. And I've known people like that were highly successful and were in abusive relationships. Yes. So just because someone on listening to this podcast is an entrepreneur and is capable of wonderful things in one area of their lives does not mean that they are immune from potentially being abused. I would also say that there may be people on that are in the audience who know that they themselves act below the lines of respect, and maybe that's an opportunity for them to think about how to do better there. And I'll get off my soapbox now and let the conversation return. Yeah. Well, thank you.
If I can touch on just a few things there.
Yeah, please.
Dignity is the baseline. If you do not have dignity, you're not in a relationship. Dignity is the baseline for any relationship. And so if there are rules put on you that the other person doesn't follow, if things just don't track, gaslighting is where the other person changes the story, and you think you're going crazy because you can't remember things. This person tells you remember things wrong. All of those things are not a relationship. That is an abusive situation for sure. And one of the toughest things, Tal, you just touched on it, is so difficult in those situations. Number one, to recognize something really is goofy here beyond like the normal stuff. And then the second thing, which is the hardest, is to accept what this really is. It is so hard to put that label on it and realize this is unhealthy. This is toxic.
And so, also, I'm going to throw in there that you shouldn't feel shame as well, right? I've known a lot of very emotionally intelligent, very plain intelligent people who have found themselves in abusive relationships, and a lot of times there's a lot of shame in that, and it's just something that they shouldn't feel. They shouldn't feel.
I know a doctor. I know somebody who's a very successful investment advisor. As you say, tall business owners, been in abusive situations. Yep. The thing is, these narcissists are fantastic at picking their victim because the victim has empathetic qualities that play directly into this person's hand. It's because you possess qualities of being a good, decent human being that they actually go after you, combined with the desire to please somebody, and they can play on that. So
one last point I want to make is that it doesn't necessarily mean they're evil or that they're always behaving badly. It's enough that someone behaves badly, frankly, any of the time, and acts below the line of respect any of the time. Sure, we all are entitled to bad days. None of us are entitled to treat someone that we love, or frankly, anyone. I mean, even in the workplace, if we want to take it there, in a way that degrades their humanity. So I think it's great that we had this, and I'm grateful to you for sharing what you've shared. And obviously, we will include the link in our show notes, so that if there are any guests that are, any listeners or viewers that would like to take the quiz, it'll be available to you in the show notes wherever you're listening to this podcast, or on YouTube. It will be right in the notes underneath the recording.
Yeah. So and it's a very important subject, and I'm glad we covered it. But we also have a little bit of time and Brandon's you're a very diverse guy. So we want to delve into a bunch of things with you. So one of the things we also want to touch upon is that you have a very, first of all, thank you for all the work you're doing on the abuse segment. Fantastic. You also have a unique project in the works, which is connecting 10 male and 10 female sales leaders for best practices, sharing those best practices, and also one-on-one coaching with you. So what inspired this idea? How do you envision the impact on such collaborations? And then if there is someone who is listening who's like, you know what, I can use that, how can they find out more?
Yeah, thanks. I was built to be in a room with folks talking about meaningful material that they can apply to their business and to their life. So I was built to be a facilitator in a classroom. It's where I thrive. It's where it's playtime for me. And my job in that room is to pull out the very best from the people who are there, supplement it with really good information, best practices, so that they can go out and do what they do even better and change their lives in little, small, incremental ways over time that yield monumental differences. In addition to that, connecting one-on-one is a passion, and really learning somebody's story, learning what makes them tick, what ticks them off, what they're struggling with. And I have not met a successful person who does not struggle with imposter syndrome. I have not met a successful person who has everything together and knows all the answers. In fact, the last interview of the Millionaires that I did, Richard Zuschlag, he's the chairman of the board of Acadian Ambulance, it's probably at this point, $450 million, $500 million organization or something. He started it with 3 ambulances, sleeping on the floor, dispatching calls himself, and the whole thing. And I asked him about how he balanced family while he was building his business. He got emotional and he said, "Thank goodness I have such a saint of a wife who kept us together. And I have children who have forgiven me." He said, "My son was playing in the state golf championship, and I sent one of my assistants to go watch him because I couldn't be there." And he said, "Thank goodness my children are so forgiving, and we're rebuilding those relationships now." So I look at somebody like Richard Zuslag, who ultimately created a $450 million business, who at the time was missing some elements and wasn't quite where he wanted to be and in alignment with where he was living the life that at the time, had he had the perspective and the broadness of it, he may have seen things a little bit differently. And so that's where I come in. Is I love to help people see the things they're not seeing, especially help them see their gifts, talents, and abilities. Now, let me land the plane because I know I got really excited and passionate about those things. I get so jazzed about what people bring to the table of life and how they can bless themselves in their own life and then the rest of us. So I'm looking for 10 men, 10 women, sales leaders. VPs of sales could be business owners, because a lot of times business owners are selling, who want to get together with like-minded people to share some of these challenges, to share best practices with one another, come and talk about, this is what I'm dealing with, so that they can help each other through it. And I'll come alongside and do one-on-one coaching as well. But I want to create this community where people really understand each other and really get it and can help each other through this, so that we don't have those Richard Zuslag moments where we look back and go, I really wish I had done that part differently.
Yeah, I think a lot of us who are entrepreneurs probably have those reflections. I do. There were many moments in my children's lives. My children are all adults now, but when my children were young, I missed many activities and events. It's still actually difficult for me to talk about, even though much like Richard's, I've been incredibly blessed. My children have been more than kind about it. But I agree. I think it's a hugely valuable thing to be helping people through, especially on the front side. A lot of times when you catch it on the backside, it's about managing your regret. And ideally, you're able to prevent versus then manage. I also want to jump on the thing you just said about, we each have, I believe you called it a blessing to share with others. And you actually gave us a personal quote, which we will release along with this podcast, that I really loved. And you talked about the need to step into your greatness and allow the world to experience all of your greatness as an individual. I'd love to know what your thought is around, what is the first step that someone should take to uncover and then unleash whatever it is that is their unique gift and talent?
The immediate thought I had will sound more self-serving than I mean it to be. Get around somebody like me who sees it. Get around somebody who sees you for who you really are. I had that gift with Steve Rockwood. I grew up without a father in the home. I moved from Utah to Colorado with my family when I was 11 years old. And I met Steve shortly thereafter. Steve is 20 years my senior or something, 15, 20 years my senior. And he was one of the leaders at church. And he was, I'll get emotional if I talk about this. He was one of those guys who put his arm around me. And he saw something in me that is a 13, 14-year-old annoying young man that I would never have seen in myself. And I always knew that Steve cared about me. I always knew he was invested in me, that he loved me. And when a couple of years after I got back from my mission, or maybe a year after I got back from my mission, he had started a company, and he called me up one day. He had been keeping tabs on me, and he called me up one day and he said, "Hey, it's time. I need you to come over and sell for me." And I don't even remember an interview process. He just trusted me. And I was still a lost ball in tall weeds in my early 20s. And he just turned me loose. Right, PJ? I mean, I made such a mess of some of the clients that we probably could have brought on.
Yeah.
But but he just absolutely trusted me. And ultimately it brought $3.8 million into the organization. So I think it kind of worked out, but yeah, he just saw me.
No, I think that's
I mean,
great.
it's really great. I love that point, which is that, we all have a blind spot. Doesn't matter how talented we are. It's really hard to see our talents, and we are all also, reality is the vast majority of people have experienced trauma in their lives, particularly when they're children. You obviously did, growing in a home without a father. I had my share, as is PJ. And we've had other guests who have talked about trauma, and the reality is that trauma creates a bit of a blind spot. And it takes other people to help you see through them. I actually recently went through a process called Neurolease, Neurolease, which stands for neurological release.
Yeah.
It was invented by a woman named Erin St. Hill, who will actually be a guest of ours in a few weeks. And I went through that process because I had some unresolved trauma, and it's about identifying trauma that is in your body that you haven't processed. And in my case, it turned out I had never identified this, and I'm sharing something very personal here, that I believe that I needed to be perfect to be loved.
Yeah.
And, the roots of that are deep and go back a long way. But the reality was, until I actually recognized that, acknowledged it, understood where it came from, I couldn't release it.
Yeah.
And when I did, and it didn't take very long, I immediately felt better and clearer. So I would say two things you could do is, one, certainly look for people who can see you better than maybe you can see yourself. And second, if you know you have unresolved issues, even if you don't quite understand what they are, but you see them, maybe they manifest as bursts of anger or other behaviors that you're not proud of. They're almost always rooted in some trauma that you haven't resolved. Find a way to resolve that trauma and lead a better life, as opposed to trying to sweep it under the carpet or manage the trauma.
Right.
PJ, our last question, and we're out of time. And we usually ask a question that's about advice, but I actually think we're going to finish a little bit more lightheartedly today.
Yeah, absolutely. So wanted to hear a little bit more about the fact that you tried out for the Colorado Avalanche in a polar bear costume and even had a fake fight on ice, please.
Fake fight.
Yeah, so I thought my path also would involve being an actor. That's before I moved to the teaching thought. I thought I had a career in acting, and with a face like this and as charming as I am, I thought it would open up. I didn't realize at the time that I had a face for radio. Okay, I didn't, but I thought I had more.
Actually, you're more handsome than PJ and myself, so certainly not.
My mom told me I have a face for radio, so
she told you that you need therapy for that. Have you had that? Have you addressed that, PJ? Because that sounds very painful.
Dude, there's so many things I need to address that ain't even funny. We don't have a couple hours.
Gotcha. All right. Well,
join me in these 10 women and men, PJ, and we'll talk about those things. Yeah. So the Colorado Avalanche came to town. I thought that I had a shot at becoming the mascot. And even if I didn't think I had a real shot, I really did think I had a shot, but also I knew this would just be fun. Let's go do this. So one of my buddies who was also an actor, I said, let's go down, let's try out for this. And part of the gig was come in costume and have a skit prepared. So I go to this tryout, I'm ready, excited, I got my skit going on. And as I'm backstage putting my costume on, I chat up this other guy, and he said, yeah, well, when I was at mascot school, I learned that. I said, stop. What? Mascot school? What are you talking about? It's a real place. I think it's in North Carolina or something. It's like, what the heck is mascot school? And then I learned that the former IHL, the amateur league Grizzly, the Denver Grizzlies years ago, was a hockey team here in town, and their former mascot was also at this tryout. So now I'm up against, as a 19-year-old know-nothing kid, I'm up against these former mascots and guys who had been to mascot school and stuff. And so I obviously wasn't chosen, but they did have each one of us who tried out come to play broomball on the ice during a game between the second and third period, and they wanted us to be in costume as we did it. So we're back in this locker room getting our stuff on, And this guy looks over at me who's going to be on the other team. He said, "Hey, do you want to have a fake fight while we're out there?" I said, "Dude, this is hockey." "Of course I do." Are you kidding me? So we're out there playing broom ball. I thought my team had just scored, and my buddy was the guy playing goalie for the opposite team. So I thought we had just scored on my buddy. So I'm raising my hands in celebration, and I got cross-checked from behind right into the goalpost.
Oh,
When you hear the puck ring off of that steel, that's because that steel is solid, right? And so he hit me right into it, and I was a little dazed. And then he threw me up against the boards, this guy that wanted to have the fake fight. And then
that doesn't sound fake at all.
I know.
It doesn't, right?
All right.
Then he starts punching the boards next to me. And I kind of come out of my daze and I realized, oh, this is the dude who wants to have the fake fight. So I start acting like he's punching me into the whole thing. So we get done. We take our costumes off. We go back. We're starting to watch the third period. And I heard this lady in front of me say to her friend, "Oh, I hope that polar bear wasn't hurt in that fight." That was me. I was the polar bear. I leaned forward and I said, "I think he's fine." And I went back to watching the game.
That's fantastic. And as I was hearing you talk about that fake fight, PJ, I was thinking about, Rich Hopkins, who was a recent guest. Not sure whether his episode run before or after yours, but Rich is a stunt. 35 years has been a Hollywood and Hollywood stuntman and lead stunts. And I wonder how he would have rated your fake fight and whether he would have done a better job. I'm imagining that he would have kept you safe and your face would not have hit the goalpost. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's just me making. Yeah, exactly.
I would have been turning that into a real fight because there's some guy.
Exactly. I mean, once my head hits the goalpost, I think all bets are off. Gloves are coming off, and I mean literally.
Yeah.
And you know what's funny about that? That's me saying that, a guy who has never in his life had a fight. The only time I've ever had a fight is some guy walked up to me when I was like 10 years old, and he wanted my soccer ball, and I said no, and he just decked me in the face. And I remember actually seeing stars like in the cartoons, Really? And that was the only fight, if you can even call it a fight. I don't think you can. I think I was just, I was the guy that took the punch. So yeah, I don't know that is actually how I would react. I'd probably just cry. But I'd like the story to be that I probably would take my gloves off and wail. So I don't know.
Like
there you go.
Story to be. I like that.
That's right.
I was a bouncer and a bartender for years. So
were you? You must have had fights then, right?
Yeah, except I was at a bar that was more like Cheers. So I was kind of more like the reader, but it was fun. It was still fun.
Gotcha. Well, friends, our guest today was Brandon Pipkin. He is an incredible guy. This has been one of my favorite interviews, and that says a lot because we've had some incredible ones. The author of 21 Questions for 21 Millionaires, which you can still find on Amazon. Yeah. He's also currently working on a program where he's looking for 10 sales leaders who are men and 10 who are women. And if you're interested in that, Brandon, where would they potentially reach out to you to inquire about that?
Yeah, reach out to me directly, Brandon at brandonpipkin.com for email, BRANDON at BRANDONPIPKIN.com. Go to the website, LinkedIn, whatever makes it easy for you. LinkedIn is also a good place.
Awesome. Sounds great. And I'd like to remind everyone that's listening and watching, it helps our podcast when you rate us. So if you like this episode, please rate us. Please listen to other episodes or watch other videos and tell your friends. PJ and I are very proud to be a top 3% in popularity global podcast. And we genuinely appreciate the many, many thousands of people who are choosing to spend some of their time with us every single week. Brandon, thank you so much. Continued success to you. And it's been a huge privilege and a pleasure to talk to you today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.